And now the survival show that once survived compromising photos on the interwebs of a bad hair day. In this episode, the other half of the Privacy and Security podcast joins us, Michael Bazzel. He shares with us some extremely creepy things people can find out about you on the internet, and we'll discuss how to clean them up. Howdy and welcome to In the Rabbit Hole's Urban Survival Podcast. This is episode number 245. I'm your host, Aaron, and you are in the rabbit hole, safe and sound. Michael, welcome to In the Rabbit Hole.
Thank you. I've been listening for a while, so it's really fun when you get to appear on a podcast you listen to, and then I'll get to watch it appear in my feed. So this is step one of being excited. Step two will be when it comes out.
Exactly. And so, I think another fun thing here for listeners is we've had Justin on the show a few times, and you are his accomplice in podcasting shenanigans over there at the Privacy and Security Podcast.
Yeah, we do a weekly privacy and security podcast, everything about being private and secure digitally, physically, the whole bit. And he actually introduced me to you. So he's definitely the common link here. And
this is neat because y'all don't do the exact same thing. And today we're going to talk about open source intelligence, which, man, this is going to be a pretty interesting episode. And I think, hopefully, it will wake a lot of people up to, I know when I was looking at it and doing a quick few searches on myself, I was like, crap, I really got to get on this. Let's start here. What is open source intelligence?
Open source intelligence has been around for decades. In the past, it was just any type of open public information, which to a CIA spy might have been a foreign newspaper that they could get off of a newsstand and bring it home and analyze it. So it's been around forever. Today, people refer to open source intelligence as publicly available information, most likely on the internet, which, it could be as simple as a Google search, but it can also go much deeper than that. So really, it's just anything free and public that anyone can have, whether you're law enforcement, government, civilian, or an evil hacker. It's free. It's out there. You just have to go find it.
Okay. So how is this different than just, say, Googling myself or Googling, some girl being Googled by some random guy?
Yeah, technically, when you Google someone, that is open source intelligence, but that's not really my definition when you talk about it. For me, open source intelligence, which is an acronym often used as OSINT, OSINT, it's the ability to find information that might be a bit more hidden or not as obvious. So my example might be, anyone can go to Google and put someone's name in and see what they get. That's fine. Anyone can go to Facebook and pull up a person's profile and scroll. What I teach and what I write about are the hidden areas. So when the person has no photos on Facebook, did you know that you can do this and this and this to actually go see a lot of photos of them on Facebook, even though they don't think you can do that? So to me, open source intelligence is digging deeper and not just accepting that first page of Google is all you're going to find on someone.
Mm-hmm. Why would the normal person care about this? I get why a CIA agent or an investigator of some sort, or a private investigator or a journalist would find these things really interesting. Why would John or Jane Q listener care about this?
When I first started writing the books on OSINT, I was working for the government. I was an active investigator, and I wrote it as a book, a guide for investigations online. At the time, maybe how to get past a private MySpace profile or something like that. And throughout the first few editions, that's all it really was for investigators. And I left government and I started really realizing how much information is out there about all of us. And what I discovered was a lot of people that were interested in open source intelligence were doing it for defense, not offense. They weren't looking for other people. They were finding ways that other people could find them. So as for the average person, I don't think most people, especially in the United States, that I don't think most of them are aware of how much personal information is available about them online, how much I can go or you can go and look and get details that people had no clue were public. So therefore, I think that people should care about this, even if you don't care about finding other people, which probably a lot of your audience might not. You should care about what people can find about you, and there's no hope of cleaning that up until you know what's out there to start with.
That's a really good point. Okay. So how sensitive are we talking? Like how much of my stuff is out there? I kind of have a sense of my own personal.
At the very minimum, you're talking your home address, phone number. So I think for most of your audience, that would be concerning enough. The fact that your home address, your phone number, maybe your cell phone number, your spouse's name, your kids' names, where your kids go to school, all of that is online. I would say it's safe to say that if you're in the US and you did nothing to protect that information and you just assume that your unlisted phone number is all it takes, I would practically guarantee you that your home address is on 40 websites, your phone number and all of that. So that's kind of the obvious stuff that's out there. When you get into social networks, now you've got a whole new area, because even if the listener doesn't have a Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc., your kids do, your spouse does, your siblings do, maybe your parents do. Someone in your family does, and they're posting a lot of stuff. So, when I used to hunt for fugitives, I didn't hunt their Facebook pages. I hunted their kids' Facebook pages. So
oh, wow.
It can get pretty ugly real quick, especially when you have people in your life that don't care about what they post.
What are some of those things? I mean, so home address, telephone number, kids, what is the stuff that people just don't realize is out there?
I think a big one is photos. Some people maybe don't care about their photos being online. For me, it's home address. That's one thing I really like to protect. And I'll give you an example. The average listener right now probably says, okay, so what? My home address is public. No one's looking for me. And that's true today. But, we've seen so many situations where a person gets a spotlight on them, where maybe some unwanted press, maybe, we've seen people with concealed carry permits that had to defend themselves to save a life. Well, now the press is out their front door because they want that first statement. We've seen the man that was kicked off the United Airlines flight, even though he had a valid seat, but they overbooked it and they had to remove him by force. By the time he got home, the media was already at his house because they had used open source intelligence to figure out where he lived. For me, it's about being proactive and removing and having this stuff at least under your control a bit, so that in the very rare, unfortunate situation where you might get that undesired spotlight, now you've done some planning for that. And maybe it's not as easy as me going to Google or True People Finder or Family Tree Now or whatever website I want to. It's just not as easy for me to find your home address. So, for me, it's all about the home address, the home phone number, my family. For some people, it's about social networks. Some people might be about location. If you have a child that likes to tweet a lot and they love the smartphone, they're probably announcing their locations. They're probably announcing their GPS coordinates where they go because of all these fun apps. If you've got someone in your life that uses Tinder, I can use a GPS spoofer. I can go online. I can make my location appear to be theirs, and I can now track them around and see where they go because Tinder runs all the time in the background. And anyone can join Tinder and have it under an Android emulator or a web browser. And now I can basically follow you around. It's not that easy, but if I have enough options set up, I can at least know the general area you're in. So, again, so many areas to go on that. But for the biggest part, I would say probably that home address that people just don't think about.
Yeah, I remember it wasn't that long ago that, and I think it was somewhere in the Northeast, where there was some journalist who thought it would be really cute to publish a map showing every single CHL holder's home address in the area. And as a concealed handgun license holder, actually, Texas doesn't, it's a handgun license now. But that's really disconcerting to me that somebody could do something like that, whether it be a journalist or whether it be somebody with more nefarious. But either way, I mean, that journalist just did it to get attention and just to try to further their own career and everybody else's life be damned.
Yeah, and we're seeing more and more of that, obviously. I just saw the other day, I believe it was yesterday, where a fitness app had a vulnerability, and now all of the users' locations of where they jog, including military bases and very sensitive locations, are out there. So this is a weekly thing now. It's nothing new. It's to the point now that if you are going on Reddit and looking at the investigative subreddits, you're finding these situations weekly. And I have so many people that contact me, potential clients, that say, okay, fix this for me. And this is not best to be done as a reactive thing. It's always a proactive thing. When someone comes to me and says, okay, this bad thing just happened, the media are outside my door, what do? There's not much you can do now. The damage is done. But the client that says, I'm getting ready to take this new job and I'm going to be a very public figure and I know I'm going to upset some people and people are going to not like me or what I do. Well, now proactively, we can maybe clean those things up, find out what's out there, and maybe by the time something bad happens and now someone's upset at you, you're not so easy to find and basically creep on.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense because I think the audience knows, like, at one point I worked for Neil Strauss, the author of Emergency and the Game. And, well, I mean, I was working for him. I was his marketing director and stuff. And most people don't know is Neil's much more influential actually in the music industry. And there was all kinds of crazy stuff in my Twitter, or just the fact that I had the association with that. And now with everybody's constant outrage, when I started making the transition to working for a corporation, that turned into a really big deal. That here I was supposed to now become the face of this multinational corporation. And guess what? I've got what really concerned them, all this baggage left over from Neil Strauss, which I thought was much about nothing, but that is the society we live in today.
Yeah, and I get contacted a lot by companies who are saying find baggage, to use your term, on someone. Whether it be, we're about to hire this guy and he's going to be a very public figure. Please show us now what the adversary is going to show us whenever we hire this person. Or, we're looking into this, even a competitor, or we're looking into this thing and this person, what can we find? And it's very, very rare that my answer is, I can't find anything. And it's not the ability on my part. It's just that there's so much abundant information out there that anyone that just took a good enough of a look could get that. I use this stuff every day to my advantage. I don't know if I should say this, but we'll put it out there. I just had a situation where I had a company that, I was getting ready for this book launch, and I had something happened. Something happened with this book, and there was a problem. And I needed an answer right now. I needed help right now. And of course, you call the support hotline and you get nothing, or you get the 48-hour wait. So I went to LinkedIn and I looked up the CEOs of this company. I used one of the tricks that I teach to find out their personal Gmail account or whatever account they use to sign up for that LinkedIn account. And I emailed them directly and just said, hey, you probably don't remember me. We met at a conference a few years ago. You said if I ever needed anything, I could contact you. Anyway, this thing happened. So sorry to bother you on a Saturday. Is there anything you can do to help? And within an hour, the CEO wrote back. He's like, oh, yeah, no problem. I'll take care of it. And I had an answer like that. And it's not because he remembered me, because we never met. It's because I contacted him through a personal email account, not that shell account on the company website. I contacted the CEO through a personal account, and he just assumed that he must have given that Gmail account to me at some time, and he helped me out. He made a call, and 5 minutes later, the problem was resolved. That would have taken me 3 days of support hell to get that going. So I guess that's half social engineering, half open source intelligence, but those two complement each other quite a bit.
Yeah, they do. And they typically go hand in hand. I know I was speaking with Christopher Hagnaghi. I could never pronounce the guy's name correctly. And that was a lot of what we were talking about, especially coming from my background with Neil, like social engineering. And you can do some pretty freaky stuff with that, with the knowledge and with the intent. Usually most people don't have that, but unless it's some spooky government situation. But yeah, it's pretty frightening. And that's hysterical that you did that. Because I mean, you think about it, that makes perfect sense how that worked. If I knew your name and I walked up to you in a public place and just said, hey, Bob, what's going on, man? You remember that time? Oh, that was so crazy. How have you been doing? Most people are afraid to say, I don't know who the hell you are. What are you talking about?
Yeah, it's funny. Every time I've done that with various companies, I always have that same kind of opening. And they never question it. They don't acknowledge it either. They don't say, oh, yeah, well, actually, I did have one guy say, oh, I remember you, which is funny because they're just trying to look, trying to impress. But most of them don't acknowledge it. They don't say anything about it, but they help. They tend to at least respond instead of, if I would have emailed them at xyzcorporation.com at their official account that's monitored by someone else, you know how that goes. They don't even see the email. That goes into a black hole that no one ever gets. So a lot of the things I teach are about how to find the proper contacts. Maybe not for that purpose, but when I teach about finding email addresses, it's not about finding that publicly known email address. It's about finding that Gmail, Hotmail, live.com email address, because once I have your personal email address, I can do much more damage because you probably registered all of those social networks using that email address. So I've had many people who were part of my investigation, and they had that Gmail or whatever email account, that personal email account, and they used that to create maybe an alias Facebook page or that junk account to blast their competition, quote unquote, anonymously. But when you tie all those to real information, once I find that one thread of real information, I can now track you back down to all of that, which is probably why Justin and I have 5,000 email addresses or whatever it might be to make sure that that doesn't happen to us. So, for me, obviously the book is written for offense. It's written to help find information. It's definitely used by investigators, but also I truly believe it can be valuable as defense to find out, if someone one day wants to come after you, whether justified or not. I think it's important for people to know what they're going to find.
That's an absolutely excellent point. We'll be back after this quick break. Listener, do you get at least $3 a month worth of value out of ITRH? You should see what we do for the Roving Horde Armada members. Check it out today by visiting itrh.net. Members get access to episodes a day early, access to monthly virtual and in-person meetups in some areas, an invitation to the secret ITRH Armada Facebook group so you can chat about survival all day long with like-minded people. Access to every episode ever produced by ITRH. That's right, all the way back to the beginning, including one that was never aired. And those are just a few things you get with your membership when you sign up and become part of the ITRH Roving Horde by going to itrh.net. Again, that's itrh.net. What do we do to fix this? Where do we even begin? Because this seems like a massive subject.
It is. And, obviously the first step is you need to identify what's out there. So you can't fix anything you don't know. So step one, we already talked about, is find out what people can see about you online. Some of it's going to be easy. Maybe you have some vulnerabilities in your social networks. I have a ton of free online tools that anyone can use. And you can run your username through to get your Facebook ID number. You can put in your Facebook ID number and find out all of the hidden information people can see about you publicly. So step one is to find out what's out there. Please use the free tools. There's no catch. There's no sign up. They're just public. They're out there. I don't see what you're doing. There's no database collecting your queries. And if you don't believe me, have someone that knows what they're doing go check that and prove that. So, at that point, what can you remove? That can vary. It depends on what style of information. So if I have a Facebook page that has a picture of you, there's not a whole lot you can do to remove that. At that point, I always just recommend start with polite contact and say, look, here's, if you're willing, would you remove that information? Home addresses, in almost every situation, you can remove that home address from that website where it's at. Justin and I talked quite a bit in our books about that. We give a lot of like a workbook style of how to remove all that. So when you do find your home address and your phone number, there's usually always an opt-out option. If you go to my website, privacy-training.com, that's a different topic, but we have all of our links for free. Basically, every opt-out that we find, go there, you can remove your information. That's the easy stuff. The hard stuff, we've had some difficult things to remove, but a lot of times, if we put enough effort in it, we can get it removed. One that comes to mind is one recently where a woman broke up with a guy, and the guy was a jerk, and so that he started posting pictures of them that weren't flattering, but they weren't revenge porn. So that there are revenge porn options to where we can force revenge porn to be removed. Google will take that down. But he knew the line that he couldn't cross. And this was devastating her because when you Googled her name, number one hit is this awful raunchy site with her pictures on it.
Oh, God.
We couldn't force it down legally because he didn't cross the line. What we did was there's a small, not well-known rule at Google and Bing and other search engines that if your signature is on a web page, you can demand that web page be removed from the index. So I scribbled her name out poorly, uploaded that as a comment to his blog post, to his comment section of it, and then complained to Google as her, my signature is on this guy's page. I forced it to be removed. 12 hours later, you can't get to the website. You'd have to actually know the long URL. No one found it. When you Google her name, now you can't get to it. So that's one example of where we have to get a bit more creative in how we do it. But with enough attention, we can usually get most of the stuff taken offline.
Mm-hmm. And you say most. Can everything be removed?
No. We've had some people we've just had to tell them, I can't help you. A big one right now is the mugshots. So, I think Arizona is a really bad one to where the state makes mugshots your public record. So there's these websites that are kind of shady. They suck up the feed of all the mugshots of people, and they put up a website where you can search that person's name and see their mugshot. And it has nothing to do with, we want to make this information available and it's public responsibility. No, they charge ransoms to have it removed. It's maybe $5,000. They'll take that down for you. And some people will pay those. So, some won't take it down at all. Rip-off report's a really big one right now to where, if I wanted to, I could go to the rip-off report right now and I could blast you and just say all these awful false things about you. And now when someone Googles your name, it'll be like number 4 on the main page. And there's nothing you can do. And they don't even want payment. I mean, you can argue with them, whatever, that they just don't really care. They get ad revenue because they're such a big site. So,
okay.
Long answer, there's a lot of stuff we can try. Short answer is there are some people that we simply can't take everything offline, which comes down to now let's be as proactive as we can to stop it getting out there in the first place.
Mm-hmm. And I guess that makes sense. And by and large, probably most of the listeners to this don't have, like, they have the normal stuff out there, but maybe they don't have mugshots. Like I actually did. I got in a fist fight when I was like 17 or 18. And so I'm sure my mugshots are out there if they go back that far. But I'm
going to go find that now.
Yeah, exactly. Because that was
challenge accepted.
Yeah, it was like 20 some odd years ago. But I think it is what it is. How, like the general average normal person who probably didn't do something stupid when they were a teenager, are they going to be able to get most of this stuff removed?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. So the average person who you don't own a business and you don't have a bunch of irate customers and you didn't break up with someone who's crazy. And, the average person who doesn't have those situations, you don't even need my help. You can go do all of this. We have all the resources online. Everything's there for you. The OSINT tools that I have on my website, you literally just put your information in and hit go a few times and it'll go find most of the stuff. And when people reach out to me and say, hey, I'd like to, there's nothing really bad out there, but I'd like to remove it anyway. Can you help me do that? My first response is, you don't need me, man. You'll do a better job yourself. And when people are willing to do it themselves, they will always do a better job than someone hired to do it because they have more of a vested interest in it. And they can absolutely go online and I would say within a few days can have the majority of it offline. And within a week or two of just, on the side playing around with it, you will be almost cleaned up. And, we have a web forum online that's completely free. And there's some great people that help when people run into some kind of a stumbling block. And also when we find a new hidden gem we just found one the other day of a new website that has almost everyone's date of birth on it. But we found an opt-out page and you can go there and say, hey, take me off that list. So no skill set required. Anyone can do this.
Huh. That's pretty cool. And I know, like, I had a cop friend in some of this. And so I did a bit of stuff over the years, like put a lot of misinformation out there and have made it not a good job, I would say. But for a casual person looking for this, I've put a lot of stuff out there to make it very confusing to figure out what's real and what's not. But for listeners now that are like, okay, I'm getting more interested in this. Maybe I should really take this seriously, but this sounds like a lot of work. What skills are required and how hard is it for this to be done by the everyday person who has a job, has kids, has a dog, and is spending most of their time worried about the zombie platypus attack and planning for that?
The biggest hurdle is the time. That's it. The skill set is not required. If you can use the search tools and find your information, you already have the skill set to remove it. It's just the time. It's that you have to, set aside an hour of your day to say, okay, what is out there, and what do I need to remove? And that's where I get a lot of people that do contact us and say, can you just do this for me? And we have people we can refer them to. But I don't like doing that because, like I said, if you don't do it yourself, you might miss things. You might see that thing about you online that's no longer applicable, but it was at one time, and it's right. So you might want to remove it to where when you hire someone else out, they look at that and say, oh, that's not accurate. So we're going to skip that. So, it's the time. But I also will say this, the majority of the people that if they just jump into it and start to make a few remove a few things, you get a bit addicted to it. And now you want to find everything. And now I've seen so many people on the forum say, I went to remove my profile from Spokeo or, that's them.com. And now I want to find more. And I like seeing that because hopefully they'll never need all of that work to have been done. But if that thing happens, and a lot of people say I'm crazy and paranoid, but I know your audience won't think this. If that bad thing happens to you, you're prepared for it. You talk about preparation a lot. Well, why wouldn't we prepare for this as well? If I do something that is mistaken, or maybe maybe I do something stupid, or it's mistaken as doing something stupid, I don't ever worry about the press being at my front door to get a statement. There's just no way they're going to go online and find out where I live. So it depends on how far you want to take it. For most people, the opt-outs, removing their stuff, that's really all you need to do. That's the good start. That will keep out the nosy coworker that wants to find out where you live. It'll keep out that person, that troll online that wants to dox you from something you said while you were playing some online game. That will stop all of that, which is really, I think that's kind of the main thing we're wanting to look at getting rid of.
Yeah. And in general, we're talking to the right audience here. These are preparedness-minded people, so they tend to be a little more watchful and paranoid, shall we say, than the average, John and Jane down the street. And I think that brings up another thing. I know one thing, my home is very personal to me, and my wife is super paranoid about anyone who comes over to the house and wants to know all about them and who is this person and why are they coming here. And so you've talked about using this for offensive purposes and everything else. Can the average person use that as a tool for just to make sure that people in their lives are who they say they are and are not shady characters, we'll say?
Yeah, and that's the absolute focus of the book that I just released. It's the 6th edition of Open Source Intelligence. It's the offensive side. Justin and I have written books on the defensive side, and that's out there. The offensive side has so many uses that we may not think about. And a lot of people might look at it as, well, you're being creepy and you're being intrusive. And well, first of all, legally, no, you're not. That's open source information. Anyone can do this. But let's say that scenarios, let's say that you have a new babysitter. I can't think of any reason you would not want to do some kind of check on the person who's going to be in charge of the life of your children while you are gone. So I would be doing open source intelligence. If they're young, I would be looking at their social networks to find out what they're really doing. I think it should surprise no one that some people can give really great interviews and seem extremely innocent when they are hiding skeletons that you may not know about. I would much rather you find them before you hire that person rather than after. So the babysitter, you might want to check the social networks. You probably don't care about checking their home address. I'm sure they would give that to you voluntarily. The new employee, a lot of the people that take my online training on how to do all this, they're looking in order to find out who should they hire. When I got my first government job, it was pretty much whatever you put on the application and how you did on the interview, that determined whether or not you got to go to the next step. Today, I think interviews and resumes are pointless. I want to know the real you. I'm going to look at not only your information, but your family's information. So I might be checking up on any employee that I might hire. I want to find out what you've been doing and what you've been doing online, how you say it, how you represent yourself, not just how you do it in the office during that interview. When I get new neighbors, they're getting the full treatment. I know that sounds awful, but I know your audience, they will understand this. I'm going to find out who they are, and they're, that car that showed up with that person that was taking pictures in the front yard. I'm going to find out where those pictures were posted and what was said, and maybe if something was said about me during that conversation. I don't know. The point is, offensively, sky is the limit. It's whatever you want it to be. We all, whether you want to admit it or not, we've looked into someone else at some point. And maybe that included you typing in a person's name on Facebook. Maybe it's someone from high school that you haven't talked to in a long time, or it's someone you just encountered that day. We've all had that time where we want to get more information about a person. And the book is written basically to help you get much more than what you're going to find on that Facebook profile, that Google page, that Twitter page. It jumps into the whole stuff that people just aren't looking at, but it's illegal for you to access.
Yeah. Okay. That's some spooky stuff and some really cool stuff. Someone is listening to this, is thoroughly freaked out. I'm including myself in that statement, and decides Michael is my brand of wacky, and I want to deep dive on this topic. I really want to get into it. How do I connect with you? How do I get your book and maybe find out more?
I'll just give you my website, which is probably the kind of the landing for everything. It's inteltechniques.com. The word Intel, I-N-T-E-L. The word techniques, T-E-C-H-N-I-Q-U-E-S. All one word, inteltechniques.com. You can also, just search for that and you'll get right to it. I keep that website as kind of the everything. Of course, it's a landing page. It's also all of my tools are there. So if you click on the tools option in the bar, every online search tool I have, completely free, completely open, blog, contact me, Twitter, it's all there. That's really the place to go to.
Awesome. Now, you've talked about the two books. You had the first book that came out that is more defensive and the offensive, but the offensive one is the one coming out now. Talk to us a little bit more about that. What all is in that book?
So this is the 6th edition of the Open Source Intelligence Techniques book. The first edition was written, really, I didn't expect anyone to even notice it. It was more of my own guide that I could give out to the guys in my office on how to creep on people on the internet. And that was the main intent. It was like, hey, to date myself, like one section was, okay, if you're a suspect, he's got a MySpace page and it's blocked, it's private, you can't see anything. Do this, and now you can see everything, and now we're good to go. Of course, that's not in the new book. That's old, outdated stuff.
Right, but MySpace is it's back again.
Yeah,
no one cares. Yeah,
right. So the book focuses on the things that are relevant now. It's 460 pages. It's a textbook size book. There's two main areas I start with, and first is the defense on your computer. If you are going to start investigating people on your machine, you better have a clean machine. You better have good security. You might want to use a virtual machine, and I walk the reader through how to do all of that. I've also created a custom virtual machine just for online investigations. Again, completely free, whether you buy the book or not. Go online and check that out. And from there, we get into each topic. So we get into search engines. A huge chapter just on how to not just go to Google and put a person's name in, but instead go to Google and do these 10 different things to find information you had no idea was even out there. How to get on people's FTP servers that you may not have known existed, and all these different things. And from there, we get into the social networks. Facebook has its own chapter, Twitter, Instagram, all these other places. And it's 25 chapters. It goes through the gamut of social networks to online communities like Reddit, email addresses, usernames, people search engines, telephone numbers, documents, photographs, videos, blah, blah, blah. It just goes down the line to find everything that I think is important when I'm investigating someone. And my experience comes from government when I was going after bad guy. And almost every time I needed to find bad guy, I found bad guy on the computer. No matter what the crime was, I found them on the internet. And that's really what sparked this whole thing. I don't do that work anymore. Now I do my own thing, but I think open source intelligence is more important than ever because we are all impacted by it. Whether you're looking for someone or someone's looking for you, it's going to be on the internet. So we can use it to our advantage and it can be used against us. Let's at least be on top of what's out there.
Crazy stuff, man. Well, awesome. Dude, Michael, I really appreciate you coming on today. What was the website address one more time?
Sure. inteltechniques.com. And I'm also on Twitter at the same thing, just Intel Techniques.
Awesome. Dude, thank you again for coming on and sharing this with us.
My pleasure, man. Thanks for having me.
Show notes, links to Michael, and everything else mentioned in this episode can be found by going to intherabbithole.com/E245. Support the show and get I2RH Roving Horde Armada members-only benefits. Go to I2RH.net to become part of the Roving Horde Armada. Twice a month, members get private virtual hangs. These are a chance to hang out with me and other like-minded everyday preppers to discuss whatever's on your mind, the things you just can't talk about with anybody else. You'll also get access to the on-demand bug-out bag class, special prepper spreadsheets, access to the secret I2RH Armada Facebook group, and that's just to name a few things you get when you go to I2RH.net to become part of the Roving Horde Armada. Again, that's I2RH.net to find out about the exclusive members-only benefits. With that, we wrap up episode number 245 from the Lone Star State. Till next time, stay safe and sound.